So, for those of you who don't know Kae, she is a creative powerhouse known for her innovative and dynamic presence in the nightlife and art scene. As the co-founder of House of Yes, Kae has transformed the Brooklyn nightlife landscape, creating a space where art, creativity, and inclusivity thrive. House of Yes, celebrated for its vibrant performances, immersive experiences, and commitment to consent culture, has become a cornerstone of Bushwick's artistic community and New York at large. In addition to her groundbreaking work at House of Yes, Kae is the founder of Yes Etc., a creative agency focused on live experiences and special events. Her passion for bringing humans together through experience design has garnered her recognition in major publications such as Forbes, The New Yorker, The New York Times. Kae is not just a nightlife innovator, but also a talented performer, comedic host, and drag artist. She is currently studying and facilitating workshops in sacred clowning. We have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Further expanding her repertoire of creative and transformative practices. Her journey began as a teenager, teaming up with her high school best friend, Anya Sapazinokova, to create art in various forms. What started as a passion project eventually blossomed into the incredible House of Yes, a venue that has been recognized globally, named the #2 best thing to do in the world by Time Out New York. Number 2 only to hang out with this one.
Right.
And listed by Forbes and DJ Mag as a top nightlife venue. Kae's dedication to creating inclusive, imaginative, and joyful spaces is evident in every aspect of her work. She regularly speaks on the topics of creating safer spaces and inclusive nightlife at international conferences, including the International Music Summit in Ibiza, Amsterdam Dance Event, also known as ADE, and Electronic Music Conference in Sydney. Tonight, we'll delve into Kae's creative process, her journey from a DIY art space to a world-renowned venue, and her vision for the future of nightlife. We'll also explore her personal passions, from her love of Bushwick's vibrant community to her dedication to building art gyms that encourage creativity and sustainability. So without further ado, everybody, please give a warm welcome to Kae Burke.
Thank you, Johnny.
Quite impressive.
That writing is very impressive.
Thank you. I got an A in writing.
Great.
So clowning, let's start there. Sacred clowning. Were you raised by clowns? Like, where did this circus clowning, like, what is sacred clowning?
Okay, so was I raised by clowns? Yeah, my dad is very funny.
Yeah.
And as a shy kid, I was actually pretty shy. I learned to make friends through being that sort of class clown, started cracking jokes. I realized people liked it. And as we know from sort of positive feedback loops, you're like, oh, this is working. And so it just kind of like kept going. But clowning really came to me as like a clear definition of clowning. At some point during the pandemic, it's like 2 a.m. I'm alone in bed. My thoughts are like, da-da-da-da-da. What's the difference between a harlequin and a jester, right? And to be fair, like I work in entertainment. I've always been a clown, but you like perform as a clown. I didn't realize that we are actually playing the sacred role in society of clowns, right? And so you don't have to pretend to be a clown. You actually already might be one. And so as I went down this rabbit hole about like harlequins and jesters, and then I went down deeper into like fools and tricksters. It's like, oh, there's like these different sub-archetypes of the archetype of clown. And I will be teaching a workshop on the 23rd or 24th, which I'll have you message out, or we can connect right after this talk.
Join the WhatsApp.
Join the WhatsApp. So through that, just really seeing like everything from, there are peyote clowns, there's the Heyoka traditions, there are these mythological sort of, Anansi, the spider. There are all of these characters even. And does anyone know Christine, the performer Christine? Yeah, Christine is like a trickster character in our modern day. RuPaul is more of like a jester character, like drag is also a form of modern sacred clowning, and clowning has just been like a timeless sort of entity within our societal fabric. And so I've been exploring that, and I'd like to host workshops that help us harness some of these different archetypes and ways that we can express our inner clown.
That's so fascinating. You mentioned your dad is quite a funny guy.
Yeah.
Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a small town called Ontario, New York, which is not in Canada. It is near Rochester, New York. So it's about 6 hours away from here, but culturally galaxies away.
Galaxies away. And your dad was a funny guy, and your mom was, what was your mom's role for you growing up?
The art, crazy creative, super artist, more in the Martha Stewart mediums of interior decorating and making little cute dresses and wedding cakes, and was very, very like a creative in so many mediums. And I feel it's the sort of things you don't realize until you're a bit of an adult and you can appreciate your parents in a deeper way. And so later I was like, oh my God, my mom was an artist. And the whole time I was like, you're just a homemaker. Right? And then I was like, oh my gosh, like of course we had so many paints and fabrics. I learned to sew from my mother. That's how I ended up in fashion school, which led to costume design, which led to performing. And so these threads, no pun intended, sort of weave their way through access to creative materials.
It's so fascinating to hear that, background as a child, growing up with a funny father who sort of inspired clowning, and your mom who had a way with like fabrics and fashion, because so much of that seems to inspire House of Yes and the aesthetic that you've cultivated. How have you seen these early childhood influences directly impact the work that you're doing now?
For me, it's really, I had freedom of expression. It was very much so. I had access, and I was very, it is absolutely a privilege to have access to materials and to be, even though my parents would totally roll their eyes and be like you're making a mess, or like, stop it. But they never said, no, don't make art. I would say that a big childhood influence for me, if you count teenage years, was also meeting Anya Sapajnikova, my House of Yes co-founder, because both of us were so into, we were both so into creating, and that when we found each other at the ripe age of 16, we're just like, you're awesome, let's make art together.
Yeah, dive into that, because Anya is such a central figure in your story, in the story of House of Yes, and you guys met at such an early age. Like, how did you guys meet? Like, what was it like meeting her for the first time? Like, curious to hear more about the story behind the founding, if you will.
Yeah, so my friends in my tiny little town met Anya at a ska show. Is there any ska friends? Where my ska peeps, skankers? What up, 2002? So we were into ska, we were into punk, we were into hardcore, we were into the subcultures of that. I guess, I feel like we were tweens, but we're like teenagers in this subculture going out. And yeah, like my friends met Anya. Her name was Anna, by the way. My name was Kathy growing up. And so Anna and Kathy became friends for meeting other friends and going to shows. And so we met each other as very much like, wow, like you're electric, you're enthusiastic. I think that was a big difference. My friends in high school really suffered from mental health issues, a lot of depression, bipolar. And so Anya, who's also, by the way, had her own mental health journey at that age, was super enthusiastic. And so I really gravitated towards that like spark of energy, and we fed off each other for many, many years.
And so when did Anna and Kathy become Anya and Kae? Like, how did that transformation
happen? It was definitely in the summer between high school and college. There was a lot of transformation happening there. I think we also did mushrooms and acid for the first time.
That's the answer I was looking for. Yeah, makes sense.
Something to do. It was a transformative time.
A mind-altering time, if you will.
Yeah.
And so you met Anya. You guys became best friends. Well, first you became Kae and Anya,
Yeah.
and then best friends, and then Kae and Anya.
Yeah.
And so walk us through the creation of House of Yes. Before House of Yes, I think, how many people here have been in House of Yes? Just out of curiosity.
Cool.
But how many people knew that there was a House of Yes before the House of Yes? So only a handful. So
Oh, and there was, this is actually the third iteration of House of Yes, the third physical location that House of Yes has ever existed. The first one began in 2007. But I'm going to give you a little, I don't normally talk about this little era, which in 2005, when we moved to New York City, we had a little art space called Boring Incorporated.
that's where it all started.
That's where it all started. And Boring Incorporated was a basement space that had, I think, like 4 or 5 bedrooms. We just like DIY. We had no money. Like neither of us come from money. And so we were just like DIY renovating these little basement things. It was so moldy. We did have a couple windows, but that became our studio space. This basement was so much larger than any apartment we could find. And we're like, hey, this is it. We have bedrooms. I think our rent was like $300 a month. And we had a huge sewing space. It was not a rave space. It was not.
Use this one.
Okay, thank you. It was not a rave space or a party space. It was very much so a space for making things and hanging out.
And then so you had this rave space.
It was not a rave space.
Or not a rave space.
More like a studio, more of like a
studio hang space.
live work basement studio. And then one day, does anybody know William Atundi? Right? Yeah, I feel like it's like similar scene.
Former guest on the show, actually.
What? Okay. So get this. Him and Anya dated in like 2000. Yeah, it's like babies, like total. Oh my God. And it was kind of like.
Tell me more.
Oh my God. It was kind of like an affair at first. It was very, oh my God. It was like wild times. Of course, at this point, we're like 21. So William Atundi, who at that point was Will to us, was throwing these warehouse raves, Complacent Nation. Way before You Are So Lucky. It was Complacent Nation, and then it was The Danger, and then eventually it was You Are So Lucky, and now it's like whatever he's calling his projects now. Collective. So at that point, 2005, him and Anya are dating. He's throwing these warehouse parties. Me and Anya get into circus performance, and so we start doing circus performance at Will's parties. And so that's how this sort of like you can see and taste the roots of this underground raw circus spectacle work that became very, and is still very alive today in House of Yes, right? Really the first seeds of that were like, yeah, we're gonna have this crazy midnight parade with 7-foot tall masks. And girl, me and Anya were like staying up till all hours of the night, like paper macheing these masks for the big party. And it was always such a stressful production, but we always pulled it off. We were stilt walking. So it was like the roots of what we were doing. So Will one day, and I think him and Anya were not dating anymore. They were on and off again for literally years. It was crazy. Could not keep track. So he calls Anya's like, hey, I got this loft space. You need to come check it out. Anya was kind of like, she's always had this very like ferocious creative energy, and she needs a project. If you know like what I'm talking, some of you are probably like that too. Like you need the project. And so she's very much so that kind of person. So she's like, she was kind of lost at this point. She was really looking for somewhere to put her energy. And so this loft space became available, and this loft space was run down. It was an art loft, but it was, hello. It'd be so cool if that was Anya right now.
Can someone just hit the off button? Thank you.
There you go.
Talk. Thank you.
Come in. It's Anya, and she's like, no, here's what happened was, that'd be so great. So long story short, as far as the roots, like that loft was the first House of Yes. So the basement space Boring Incorporated was kind of our primordial ooze sort of it wasn't, like at that point we weren't doing classes like we ended up doing at House of Yes. We weren't doing parties like we ended up doing at House of Yes. But that loft and that connection and that sort of like, you got this, girl, you should take over this crazy, like really ill-built loft and like tear down all the walls, keep that we had a stage that was built. The bathtub was next to the stage. Has anybody been to the first House of Yes here? Like once in a while, there's someone who's like, I was there. And I love that. I love that. And that was great. And so after a year of, my sewing studio moved there. So every Wednesday we had the sewing night where people could come and make costumes. We had Circus Skillshare. That was every Wednesday. We had all the, like weekly events and a monthly party. So the weekend after monthly party, the house burns down. Like we get this kitchen fire. There's like a blue corn tortilla in the dirty toaster oven, and the toaster oven catches on fire. And then the huge monster head that's hanging over the toaster oven caught fire, and it had long hair made of twine. And like the twine caught fire, and then it was over. And you're like, but didn't you have a fire suppression system and like extinguishers? The answer is no. We had extinguishers, but they were like under the stage. They were, we're 21. What did you expect? So the first House of Yes burned down after only a year of existing. And we thought that was the end. Do you want me to keep going or do you want to ask questions?
No, I think this is riveting.
Okay.
So
So then the question is, okay, do we continue? Do we want to continue? At first we're like, well, like all of our shit's burnt. That was crazy. And within 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, once the adrenaline settles down, we figure out like, wait, like House of Yes needs to continue. I mean, to be fair, Will Atundi, Larissa Fuchs, if you know Gemini and Scorpio, if you know Rubulad, like those were the party crews that are amazing, still alive today, still like doing events after 17 years at this point. Like bless all of us for sticking in the game that long. It's crazy. But those were the people that the fire was still burning, and they were putting their resources together to plan our fundraiser. Like literally like fire trucks pulling up, and they're like, okay, well, if you cancel your party, we combine forces, we could do it at Pussycat Lounge. Yeah, we'll do it at I could put on my mailing list. Like, yeah, I got it. And we just like, within 2 weeks, we had a fundraiser party that was able to get $14,000 that was able to be the security deposit on our next warehouse, House of Yes 2. And if you want to know some witchy magic, you're like, but how did you find it? I'm like, I was going to FIT at the time. So I go down, like, I didn't have a laptop. Like, we're talking like 2008. No, yeah, this is 2008. You think I could afford a laptop? Hell no. So I go to the computer lab and I'm like, go on Craigslist. I'm like, let's see what buildings are available. Literally the first listing I look at is live workspace, tall ceilings, Bushwick, East Williamsburg. I'm like, Mauser Street. I've never heard of Mauser Street. And that building ended up being the one that we rented and did House of Yes in for 5 years.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so that was really the proof of concept on some level to House of Yes as we know it today.
Yes, yeah.
And then, so what happened after 5 years?
Well, fun fact, for both the first two House of Yeses were live workspaces. So we illegally, and as a lot of you know, that doesn't really, liquor, we didn't have a liquor license. We have people living there. So you're constantly living with the fear of your entire art project getting pulled away from you at like any knock, right? It could happen like Department of Buildings, the fire department, the police, like any sort of, I don't know, like city department can come and shut you down and you'd be basically homeless. And your community would also be homeless for their creative endeavors. And so that being said, after 5 years, we were negotiating with the landlord. I think our rent was $5,000 at that point for, I'm talking like 5,000 square feet, like 3 floors. Who's been to House of Yes number 2? Y'all chill. Yes, okay. Maybe a yes. Okay. House of Yes number 2 is also wacky because that's where we cut our teeth, proof of concept. That one is where we started really doing circus shows. This one had a stage, it had lighting, it had sound. We would do a party not once a month, every weekend, twice a weekend, sometimes 3 times a weekend. This is a very important fact though, is we were not the ones producing and promoting the parties necessarily. We were the sort of canvas and hub for the community. So the underground rave party burner community. So Mr. Saturday used to do the parties there. If you know Mr. Sunday, we're now nowadays. John, who runs Bossa Nova Civic Club, he was throwing his parties at House of Yes. Everybody from Bubbles and Bass, Disorient, Robot Heart, Black Market, this party called Reconstruct. If anyone knows that. So there's this whole scene in 2008 to 2013 of party groups that were doing a quarterly, sometimes a monthly party at House of Yes. So that was their home. And so when we lost our lease, eventually, our landlord took it from 5,000. He's like, how about 10? I'm like, that's 100% increase. And we were already we were sustaining. At that point, Anya and I were getting paid $400 a month to like run it. Like that was we're like, oh, cool. Like we're making enough money. Like we can get paid $400 a month. Great. We made our money doing gigs outside House of Yes. We were performing in the city, stilt walking, aerial, making costumes, producing other people's parties. So that's where we made our money. House of Yes was like our passion project. So by that point, we're really old. We're like 26. and we're like, we can't live like, we lose this space. It was devastating. I was gutted. I was really gutted. The landlord signed to somebody else. I thought we were negotiating. I hadn't seen anyone doing walkthroughs. It was kind of like an under the cover deal. So it was really a surprise and quite devastating. The question became, are we going to continue? And also, if we're going to continue this underground stuff, if anyone who was around in 2013 might remember all the parties getting busted. Yeah. From Bang On, Unicorn Me, if anyone remembers that party, like all the parties, even like Will's parties, like everything was getting busted. Bushwick was blowing up, rents are going up. Loud parties just like weren't really possible. So we were lucky we were on this little street where we could be a bit loud, but a new location, we're like, this is not gonna work. Like, also, like, you know what's funny? We were not that financially motivated. It wasn't like, yeah, we should start making money. We're like, yeah, we should just start not losing money. And so we're like, we can't put all of this like blood, the sweat, the tears, like all of our savings into a new place and just have it potentially get sucked back up from under us at any time. So we're like, we need to have a legal space. We need it to be absolutely secure. How do we do that? And we did not know because we've only done it illegally. So we're like, So we started talking to other venue owners, real estate people. We weren't even really sure what we were looking for at that point. We knew we wanted to be in North Brooklyn, but the square, it needed to be tall because at that point we were super, super, super known for our aerial arts and our circus arts. And so that was a big part of what we provided. So we're like, we need tall ceilings and off the L train ideally, and something that can actually be legal. And so the search began. And as you can probably figure out, the next part of the story is we did find a building.
House of Yes 3.
Yeah, more importantly, we started doing, so this is cool for, raise your hand if you're an event producer, you throw parties, you do like community stuff. Yeah, I see a lot of, no, that's so cool. I see a lot of hands, and I like telling this story because we started small and we worked our way up as our capabilities grew. And so although people might be like, I want to open a nightclub. I'm going to raise $6 million. We're going to go big. I'm like, that's great. But that's like trying to get a master's when you haven't really gotten your high school diploma. You can do it, I think. It's probably very hard. So it was very cool that we did have this gradual education. We also had a community. Like I said, we didn't even build our community. Partnership is so important to us, like collaboration and partnership. And so all of those micro communities ended up intermixing and becoming our larger community. So when House of Yes, when we closed down, all of those other communities gave a fuck, right? They cared. So when we sent out that mailer saying like, hey, like this is the end, but not forever. We want to continue. Please contact us if you, like, here's what we're looking for. We basically put together a manifestation list of like if you're any of the, if you know real estate, if you know theater, if you know permitting, like talk to us, reach out. That net was much wider than it would have been 5 years ago. So it was very cool. And in that net, we, just like when you go fishing, you're gonna get a lot of, what do you call that? Kelp. Yeah, you get a lot of like
Stuff.
We took a lot, we don't have time for it today. We took some of the craziest meetings. We're like, what was that?
Can you talk about some of the craziest meetings?
One was just like it was like undergrad. They're like, okay, take this over. It's an old party city. I have the liquor license. I'm like, I know enough about liquor license. You can't, like, I can't give my liquor license to you. It's a complete, you have to apply for your liquor license as an individual, as an entity. I'm like, he's like, yeah. If you take over the lease, like you get the liquor license with it, comes with it. I'm like, that's bullshit. I'm like, either you are wrong or you think I'm dumb. And so that was one where me and Ani just like walked up and we were like, oh, whoa, absolutely not. And then we have this meeting with Justin Ahayan, who is an awesome drummer and this kind of music guy who was in our community. He drummed at one of our shows, and his cousin that did construction and kind of owned some bars in the Lower East Side. And so we had a coffee with them at Loom, if you remember, or Cave, if you remember that. And it was vibey. It was just, we're like not full of bullshit. And they became our business partners. And Alon had some money. He didn't have tons of money. He had some money. And so we had to figure out how to get the rest of the money. Brought in another friend to invest who then took out a bank loan. And so we didn't have a ton of investors like some projects do. We had a very small amount. And the rest of us are sweat equity for those who are into the business breakdown of things. And so Alon was the one who's like, he's like, yeah, I saw this building. I like it. He's Israeli. So he's like, yeah. There's a building on the corner. I looked at it. We're like, but it's like 14 feet tall. We're looking for a really tall building. He's like, no, you can make it taller. Like, this dude is like, no. He's like, it's easy. You're not building, you're not adding square footage. You're just making it, it's a light construction. It's fine. It's really quick and it doesn't cost as much money. He was right about some of that. He was right that it could be done because that House of Yes building that many of you've been at is indeed, like, used to be 14 feet tall. And that whole theater spot is new as of 2016. So we added that on. It was not as cheap and quick as we thought. Anyone who's done construction or renovations will know that it's never as cheap or fast as you think it will be. But that's how it happened. Like, by that outreach, that community, that connection, and just like one thread into one thread, and like, yeah, like, hey, talk with my dude. It felt right, and it happened. And there was just a lot of sort of that that yes energy that went into it. And I do thank Alon because he put a lot of trust into people that were very young that technically didn't have that much experience. So, but it was based on energy of like, hey, like we can work together, and we've done really great work together. So I'm really, really grateful for all the partners because it took all of us to make it happen.
Wow. Something that you mentioned earlier was about how so much of what made this work was the community and growing, your actual community authentically and organically. Something that we think a lot about is growing the community inside out versus outside in, if you will. Growing the community through our community versus going out to, like you said, some random people. And how do you think about the tension between growing the House of Yes community organically, especially like rewinding back to the beginning days of House of Yes 3, the tension between growing this community organically that you've been growing through your renegade parties and through your co-living spaces with being a full-on public venue. Yeah. When all of a sudden you're going to get an influx of new people who are often amazing, but are just brand new to the community and on some level have the opportunity to not necessarily mesh with the community. The more, to put it another way, the more commercial House of Yes becomes on some level, the concern is diluting the je ne sais quoi, if you will, that gave it its initial impetus.
Yeah, I would say it's, as we were talking earlier, when you cast a wider net, you're gonna get more kelp. Stuff. Or whether it's, and I do believe in like the creative awesomeness of all people. I do believe that many people have been socialized in ways that don't necessarily support positive experiences for other people. And I wouldn't even say that that's not necessarily their fault at the core of their spirit. That's just learnings and experiences that they've had that have colored their perspective and their behavior. So when you talk about that, then you're like, okay, then people are able to transform. People are able to change, especially if they're open-minded and have a desire to. And so when we had to start setting a container, there was a really awkward, the first year or two of House of Yes, I would say, and today. So this is actually, we've had waves of continued sort of working with that curation of community and also audience education. And so, I can tell like a lot of us in the room, I'm kind of like, we understand consent speeches and we've been to Burning Man and we kind of like can understand a lot of that. But when House of Yes became getting in something like Time Out New York, we actually stopped doing press. Like we started saying no to a lot of press opportunities because the more out there we were, we saw a direct influence into a lot of people showing up who did not know how to behave. And I'm very sorry if anyone's ever been to House of Yes and has not had the best time ever because of somebody else behaving just like a rookie, like a party rookie. And unfortunately that happens because some people, this is their first rave experience. And I've spoken on this to friends who have come up and been like, House of Yes used to be cool. What did you do? I'm like, oh. And they're like, yeah. Zoe Nightingale, if anyone knows her. And I had to really be like, oh, and she was so mad. She's like, they're wearing these dollar store Amazon bullshit costumes. I'm like, they're wearing costumes. They're trying, like, this is, for some people, this really is baby's first rave. This might be, and like, this might be their first Molly experience. This might be, like, you might be talking to somebody who is like literally super, super closet, comes from a country or culture that they are told to not express themselves, that dancing, as we know, unfortunately, I'm getting goosebumps, some countries, it's illegal to dance, especially as a woman. And so if you dare judge somebody that you don't know the story of, and they're like, they're on the dance floor, but they're not vibing, man. It's like, you go check yourself and like check your compassion and check your understanding for other humans, because this is a space. Thank you. Yeah. I think it's a privilege to have this sort of, like, the more experiences you have, you're like, oh yeah, I've been to like the best raves in the world. And like I've done Burning Man, I've done Burgoyne, I've done Ibiza, you know, like, oh yeah, I've been to Lightning Society. I go to these cool, I've been to 57 Grand, this cool love party. I'm like, guess what? Some people come to House Yes and they don't know, and they're gonna learn, and it is up to us to try to teach those people, and also it is up to our staff and security to gently escort those people to the sidewalk if they do not take a hint or a direct message and it's like, yo, don't do that. So we try, but humans are hard.
Yeah.
Humans are hard, and it is like, so thank you for anyone that's like had that grace, and all, whether you're at House of Yes or not, and you have that sort of patience and grace with other people in party spaces, that you're like instead of judging, being curious and welcoming, and just like seeing how that changes your own vibe, that maybe you'll be less tense
And helpful.
and helpful, maybe make a new friend, and like maybe. And that's just what I hope.
That's beautiful. And it really speaks to one of the core principles that House of Yes seems to make really transparent and clear, which is inclusivity.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just lip service. It's actually really bring in people across different backgrounds, even the ones who may be rookies, if you will, and helping show them a better way.
Yeah.
As you're approaching nearly 20 years of House of Yes across its many manifestations, how do you think about its legacy and the legacy you'd like it to leave in the next 20?
Yeah, so I have visions for House of Yes. I would love for it to go full circle, hero's journey into being an art collective, a live workspace. Like if like money and time and energy was like no biggie, I'd be like, okay, cool. Yeah, like live workspace, less nightlife. And this is so selfish. I'm like, this is what I want for me. It's like less drugs, less drinking, less staying up super late. Maybe like once a month. But maybe not every weekend. But having like live workspace community, but definitely a makerspace. So different mediums, makerspace, having a rehearsal studio, having a lot more education into the arts. So like really like self-expression education, whether that's with your hands, making costumes, like we did way back in the day, or circus school, which the first two House of Yeses actually had an aerial school 6 days a week, what the second House of Yes did. And School of the Entrepreneurial Arts. So like, how do you make a pitch deck? How do you bounce a budget? How do you get your business off the ground? Like what does the community need now? And to me, I'm like, does the community need more raves and dance parties? And we need dance parties, but do we need more of them? But do we need more opportunities for us to expand our skills or to connect with community in a way that isn't about drinking and eating? So creating, like spending time together, creating and learning versus consuming. There's a balance. Like I'm not, you could have your dinner parties, invite me. But my friends started throwing a craft night, and that was just so lovely. And I would love to see more programming and more spaces that have that. So my big wish for House of Yes is not to scale internationally into all these cities and have like, just like so much nightlife, is to actually have nightlife just be one of the many pillars and offerings that House of Yes does. So that's my dream.
The House of Yes universe.
House of Yes universe, yeah. Yeah. That's really sweet.
We have so many people in the room who are, artists, creatives, aspiring to, create something that will, last and endure for 20 years and beyond. What are some of the biggest things that you've taken along this journey, from the resilience and resolve to overcome the tragic fire in the first House of Yes to building House of Yes into its current iteration to all the new projects you're working on now? What are some of the biggest things and pieces of advice that you feel have resonated most with you in your journey?
Yeah. Find a mentor. Like mentorship is so important. I was very lucky to find them or they find me. I hired an executive coach at some point, and that was really helpful. So I really feel that that's sort of like the softer skills and having that guidance from anybody that's walked the path before, very, very helpful to have a mentor on speed dial, and you could just ask those questions.
And how do you find a mentor, just to be specific?
I think, honestly, okay, there's so many ways. There's my mentor right now. How do you find a mentor? Okay, there's a couple ways. Sometimes you can just ask someone straight up. You're like, I really appreciate your work. Do you ever do mentorship? Or can I bring you out to lunch, my treat? You know, everybody needs to eat food at some point. If they're like, you want me to leave my apartment? Like, can we hop on a quick call? You know, and if they say no, that's fine. Most people love to hear themselves talk, but love to share experience. And it feels good to help other people. So unless someone is super crazy slammed, they're typically very down to share the experience. Honestly, follow them on Instagram. I don't recommend LinkedIn just because I feel like it's so spammy, right? I don't read my LinkedIn messages much, honestly, but my DMs I'm in.
Slide into those DMs.
In my DMs. Yeah. And also happy to, and on that note, extend if anybody is in that space, like you can share my info. I'm Kae Burke on Instagram, KaeBurke. Happy to hop on a little brain jam call. It's a pleasure. I like to share the deeper. I've got like budget templates I'll send you. You know what I mean? If you're like, I want to do a party, but I've never done it. I'm like, don't lose all your money. There's ways to do it that'll make it more fun and easier for you. So anyway, yeah, mentorship's really important. Self-care is the thing people talk about, especially in nightlife. I've been addicted to drugs. I've been a hard drinker. Like I've been a workaholic. I got really into Adderall at some point. You know, like this stuff, like it's really hard. And like you need to have a lot of awareness and call yourself out on your own shits and have a community that will be like, girl, like when you're pushing anything too hard, and it could be work. Like let's say you're here and you're sober, but you like don't give yourself a break and you are really into working all the time. Like that's also unhealthy. So check yourself and check your friends too. And it's okay to be that person that says like, hey, I want to check in. I've seen this pattern. Like, how are you feeling? Yeah, it's helpful. So take care of yourself, take care of your community, and reach out, mentor the little ones, and find yourself a mentor.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think we have time for a few audience questions. Is that all right?
I love audience questions.
Do we have any questions in the audience? I think we have time for about 5 minutes of questions. Yes, Dave in the back.
Over the years, obviously, you've seen a lot of stuff come through CS. Is there anything that just quickly jumps to your mind in terms of something that somebody did at a party in terms of it?
Yeah. Let's see. I saw a very bizarre play. House of Yes does not do a lot of plays. And the audience was sitting on stage and they were performing kind of like where the dance floor was. I just thought it was a very creative use of the space itself, and that just stuck out to me because it was unexpected. So as creators, it's very fun to play with the medium of what the fuck. And it was really like, yeah, it was absolutely charming to come into the space like that. This guy Ricardo did a lot of more classical music at House of Yes, and so it was very lovely to have a sort of highbrow like highbrow sort of art forms and what I consider a mid to lowbrow sort of. We're like, wow, this is like this high art moment. It's so cool. So yeah, those are two that just pop out, but we've had so many.
Any other questions? Sasha.
Yeah, question for you. How has social media changed community? Like listening to your story, it sounds like community played a really consistent role from the first fire to trying to find this 14-foot building, this Israeli guy. Because it used to be, if it was an interesting, like, whatever, a friend had to refer me to software. There's this interesting techno thing, like, I'll tell you more. And now it's interesting with, like, talk. I don't have to be directly connected to someone who's going to introduce me to find out about it.
Yeah.
Changes it. You have a better view of all those.
Yeah, I would say there's two things. One is, how cool is it that if something resonates and vibes with you that you scroll upon, you're like, this is made for me. This is awesome. I want this. Especially we're talking about those people that maybe don't have the privilege and access of having super cool friends. They have all of a sudden a super cool knowing of a super cool thing. So I'm all about that sort of inclusive accessibility. It does cast the wider net. We've already talked about the problems, the challenges with that. It's really the most challenging thing about the evolution of House of Yes is capitalism and how we actually were a not-for-profit, the first two spaces. And so going into investment, capital, like have to make money, always have huge payroll. We have to pay so much staff, like just to keep it going. And the sort of like, oh, like we need to sell more tickets, put out more signal, like do some paid ads, like, oh, we got to go viral on TikTok to fill the room. Like that's what I'm like not, and that's I'm like I want to do community education now. Like I'm like trying to like jam pack a nightclub full of strangers every weekend is like hard, very hard. And that's why I work a lot with promotion partners, because then they, as you've probably seen on our calendar, we have a lot of co-producers, and so when they bring their really cool curated community, that's a lot. You can really like feel that difference, and it's more of a collaboration than trying to just like sell tickets to anybody on social media. But yeah, we've seen it. I want to talk to you more about that later because it's evolved a lot.
Just quickly on the capitalism front, what are some of the oddest jobs you've had in New York?
My first was a pedicab driver. Back before you needed. Yeah, were you also?
Uber.
Oh shit. Wait, but not petty. Were you a bicycle or in a car? Car.
I drove.
You drove? In a car? It's like, yeah, being a cabbie, it's super good. I was in the bicycle, like the tricycle cab before you needed a license to do it. Yeah, the pedicab driver. I was a dominatrix for a little bit. So that was fun. I wasn't great at it, to be honest. It was fine. I was young and cute. They didn't care. Yeah, and I just like, oh my God, but honestly, being a stilt walker for special events, you go into the weirdest place. You're at like a private party for like a gallerist's high-end private collection at the private penthouse, and it's all fancy. And then I'm like, also for like the holiday party for the local 11 electricians union, right? Or like a kid's, like the PS 122 health fair in the Bronx. So you see like these cuts of New York City that you would never see otherwise. So I've had some interesting side jobs in chat.
Well, thank you so much, Kae. This was such an insightful